Jai Hind दोस्तों. In this video, I'll speak about Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart. I will deal with this novel in two videos. In the first video, I will give just a brief outline and introduce some of the characters. I will explain the novel from post-colonial perspective. I will identify the elements like culture, identity, and colonialism in the novel. In the novel by Chinua Achebe. Chinua Achebe's most celebrated novel, Things Fall Apart. This is very important. What Chinua Achebe has said. What he said. Until the lions have their own historians, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. What does it mean? It means that we ourselves should write our own history. If somebody writes your history, they tend to undermine, they tend to marginalize, they tend to create stereotypes, that is, a false representation of you and your culture and your country. This is what Edward Says said. This is what Edward Says said. It's a kind of not representation but false representation. So we must write our own history. Otherwise, in the history, you will be the victim and victimizer will be glorified. Chinua Achebe is considered to be the father of modern African literature. He is the father of modern African literature. He is the critic, he is the novelist, and he is the poet. Chinua Achebe has worked for Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation as a radio producer and director of external broadcasting. And it was during this period that Chinua Achebe started writing as a novelist. Chinua Achebe produced 5 great novels, and the most celebrated one is Things Fall Apart, which was published in 1958. Then we see No Longer at Ease, 1960, Arrow of God, 1964, Man of the People, 1966, and Thills of the Savannah, 1987. And then this is a write-up, it's kind of article that he wrote, An Image of Africa, Racism in Conrad's Heart of Darkness. The article was published in 1977. This is very important article from post-colonial perspective. Try to understand these lines from which he has taken the title. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. The very first line, things fall apart. So the title which he has derived from W.B. Yeats's poem, The Second Coming, has certain context. So Chinua Achebe borrowed this title for his novel, Things Fall Apart, to convey the collapse of traditional Igbo society. Igbo is ethnic community, and he has taken these terms, things fall apart, from Yeats's poem to show the collapse of traditional Igbo society in Nigeria. Traditional Igbo society in Nigeria during the late 19th century under the impact of British colonialism and Christianity. Achebe's novel explores the disintegration of the protagonist's world, that is, who is protagonist Okonkwo, as his cultural identity and way of life are threatened by external forces, that is European power. Try to understand the family tree. Some of the characters we need to understand, otherwise we will not be able to connect one with other. So every character is connected. So major character, as I have said, is Okonkwo. Okonkwo is the son of Unoka and Ikwefi. Now below you will see 3 women. One is unnamed, one of his wives. He has three wives, and one of them is Noah's mother. So Noah's mother is not given the name. She is not named in the novel. His second wife is Ikwepi, and the third wife is Ojugo. Okonko has son from his first wife Noe and a daughter from his second wife Izinma. He also has a son. He is not his biological son, or Okonko is not his biological father, but then there is a character Ikmepuna. So try to understand the setting of the novel. Most part of the novel is set in Umofia, then Igedo, Mbanta, Mbaino, Abemi, and the Evil Forest. So these are the places in the novel we will encounter while reading the novel. But most of the things take place in Umofia. Umofia is the cluster of villages. It is a cluster of villages. Most of the action takes place there. But we need to understand the places mentioned in the novel, like Umofia, Igedo, Mbanta, Mbaino, Abemi, and the Evil Forest. So the place which is named in the novel Umofia is a fictional village. It's not a real village. It's a fictional village. And this fictional village is modeled after Achibe's own hometown of Ogidi, Ogidi, in the Igbo region of Nigeria. As I said, Umofia is a cluster of 9 villages, including Okonko's own village, Igedo. Okonko is in fact from Igedo, that is his native place, and Mbanta, a neighboring village, where Okonko's mother is from, because during the exile he lives there with his maternal uncle. Then the next place is Abemi, a village that is attacked and destroyed by the British colonizers. It was completely colonized by the Britishers. And then there is the Evil Forest, a sacred forest where the Igbo people dispose of their dead and where Okonko's adopted son Ikmepuna is killed. So these are the visuals. You see how their houses were. You can imagine how the people would live. You at least can guess what kind of life they had. And Achebe very realistically tries to portray this community and lives of the Igbo people, that is ethnic community in Nigeria. Igbo villages are known for their rich cultural heritage. Though they were backward, no doubt about that. There was no economic prosperity. They were agrarian. The Igbo society was agrarian society. No much financial activities, no industry, no science, no technology. Very traditional kind of people they were. And they loved nature so much. And they were known for their rich cultural heritage. Okonko is the most important character in the novel. He is very stout, he is very sturdy, very tall. He has imposing figure. He has piercing eyes. He has a scar above his left eyebrow. He was very determined. He is in fact very strong-willed and determined, very passionate, very proud, very stubborn. Stubborn, he doesn't listen to anybody. He never expresses his emotions and feelings towards anybody, neither towards his children, not towards his wives, not to the people around him. Because, as I said, he loves his daughter and adopted son Ikmepuna so much, but he never tried to show that to anybody. He always suppressed his feelings. He suppresses his feelings, but he is very committed He is very loyal to his family and community particularly. Here, community is above family, but he also has certain shortcomings. He was very angry person. He is very aggressive, and this anger and aggression brings a kind of his downfall. He is respected and admired by all his peers, not only the people from his village, but from the neighboring villages also. He was a successful wrestler. He defeated many of the established wrestlers, and therefore people respect him. People listen to him, people respect him, people admire him. As I said, he is a great wrestler and warrior. But he also has certain shortcomings that bring about his downfall. As I said, very short tempered, and he resorted to violence. All his wives, all his wives are in constant fear because he is a very angry person and aggressive person. He never expresses his emotions and feelings towards anybody. He fears failure because he saw his father being a failure. His father was utter failure, and he was ashamed of his father because his father was like happy go lucky, just involving himself, just involving himself in flute playing. He was under debt. He never cared about the family. He never cared about anyone else except himself. And therefore, he didn't want to be like his father. He didn't want to be like his father because his father was an utter failure in his life. He always wanted to prove himself. Who? Okonko always wanted to prove himself. And the most important thing, he values his culture more than anything else. He values his culture and traditions more than anything else. He has a strong desire for power and status, but he struggles with his anger and emotional expression and cultural identity. He faces challenges from colonialism, cultural changes, and his personal relations with his family and the people who tend to accept Western values. So faces all these challenges throughout his life. His relationship with his father is not good because, as I said, he is ashamed of his father. There are several reasons for that, which I have explained. He loves his son, Noe, but he has strained relationship with his son. Noe and Okonko, they like two poles apart. Noe did not like superstition in his own culture. He didn't like the blind belief. He didn't like people being so cruel in the name of tradition, in the name of culture, in the name of practices. So he is very fascinated by the Western values. Who? Noe is fascinated by Western values, and therefore we see a very strained kind of relationship between father and son. So, how and why Okonko is like that? Okonko's character is shaped by his cultural upbringing. It's not fault of his. He was brought up like that. He was brought up in that atmosphere, in that culture, and therefore he was just like the people who brought him up. The whole personality of Okonko is shaped by the culture, tradition, and practices in Igbo society, and therefore we find that there are many shortcomings in his character. Then the next character is Ikwepi. Ikwepi is the wife of Okonko, and name of his mother is also Ikwepi. Coincidentally, Ikwepi, Okonko's wife, she is traditional woman. She is very respectful, very caring, and she takes care of all her children. And she has very tender feelings towards Zinma, her daughter. She always supports her husband Okonko. but sometimes, not always, but sometimes challenges his authority. As I said, they were under constant fear of Okonko, but sometimes they challenge. Sometimes, particularly, Ikwepi challenges him, but not to great extent. And she symbolizes the importance of feminine presence in Igbo society. From her, we get to know what kind of place the women had in Igbo society. It was patriarchal society, and women were marginalized. They had no say as such. So Unoka, his father, is very lazy, very unsuccessful, and debt ridden. I said he is happy-go-lucky kind of person. He always engaged in playing his flute. He is fond of music, and he doesn't care about the world nor care about his own family. He loves music and storytelling, but lacks responsibilities. And his character stands in close contrast with Okonko. Okonko is ashamed of his father. He didn't have great feeling for him because of the kind of person I have described: debt ridden, unsuccessful, lazy, only loves music, no family responsibility, no community responsibilities. Izinma, the next character is Izinma, Okunko's daughter, who he loves so much. Very intelligent, bold, and independent. He wanted that his son be like his daughter. She were a boy. He says she were a boy. It means that he wanted to see Noe in place of Izinma. He wanted his son be like his daughter Izinma. But being daughter, she had no scope, no space in the society. Though she was very intelligent, she is very bold and very independent. The most favorite child of Okonko, whom he wishes were a son. She represents the potential for change and modernity. But unfortunately, in Igbo society, she also, like his mother, but unfortunately in Igbo society, she also, like her mother, does not have any space. Then Ikmefuna. Ikmefuna, as I said, as a result of peace settlements, Okonko, Umofia, had to adopt a child, and the responsibility falls with Okonko. Okonko accepts Ikmefuna as his own son. He adopts him and raises him like his own son. He loves him more than his own son, Noe, a young, very kind and gentle, who Ikmefuna is young, very kind and very gentle. And he brings a kind of joy and companionship to Okonko's life. He is very happy with this boy. But unfortunately, we find that he is a tragic figure whose death marks a turning point in the novel. Next character is, there is a clash between father and son, Okonko and Noe. Okonko stands for tradition and Igbo culture, whereas Noe stands for change. Noe stands for modernity. Noe accepts the ideas introduced by the Western powers. He finds them very exciting and finds them very innovative and novel, and therefore he gets fascinated by the ideas introduced by the European power. He converts to Christianity, and his conversion to Christianity symbolizes the disintegration of traditional Igbo culture, traditional Igbo society. Oberika is Okonko's best friend, who is very wise, compassionate, and understanding. Because whenever Okonko has to take advice, he consults Oberika. He is a wise person, very compassionate, and very mature. He serves as voice of reason and moderation. Very controlled kind of personality, very poised personality, very balanced personality. And he too, like Okonko, represents Igbo values of community and cooperation. Then we have Mr. Brown, British missionary. All the missionaries are not good, but he seems to be little good. Respectful, empathetic. He is very empathetic. He helps the people, and he was very kind towards. He has good feelings towards Igbo culture. He tries to understand and learn from the Igbo people. Mr. Brown is one of the missionaries. And then Reverend Smith. He is also British missionary. Very arrogant. Doesn't listen to anybody. And culturally very insensitive. And he represents, Reverend Smith represents the destructive impact of colonialism on Igbo society. So we have two missionaries, but one is good and another is very insensitive, unkind towards Igbo people and their culture. This was a kind of very brief introduction to the novel, The Things Fall Apart. So in my next video, I will examine the novel Things Fall Apart from post-colonial perspective, and I'll try to deal with the issues like culture, identity and colonialism in Things Fall Apart. But this was a kind of background to understand theoretical approach that we are going to apply to the novel Things Fall Apart. Thank you. Jai Hind.